The hegemony's ambush was perfect, or so they believed. Admiral Kithara Vex watched from the bridge of her flagship Dominion's Maw as the human fleet materialized from hyperspace directly into the killing field. 47 Terran vessels, including their precious dreadnoughts, hung suspended in the gravitational anomaly like insects in amber. The artificial gravity her scientists had constructed would hold them for exactly 17 minutes before their fusion cores overloaded from the strain. 17 minutes, she murmured, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. More than enough time to erase humanity's navy. The hegemony had spent 3 cycles preparing this moment. After humanity's surprising victories at Kepler 442 and the Proxima Relay, the Council of Hierarchs had demanded decisive action. The upstart species had proven more resourceful than anticipated, their adaptive tactics causing uncomfortable losses among the hegemony's client races. But adaptability meant nothing against physics itself. Captain Vasek of the UES Retribution realized the trap's nature within seconds of emergence. His tactical display painted the grim picture in stark red. Gravity readings spiked beyond measurement, hyperspace drives offline, conventional engines straining against invisible chains. Around him, 46 other ships hung motionless while 200 hegemony vessels formed a perfect sphere of death. All ships, this is Retribution Actual, Vasek transmitted on the emergency channel. Prepare for the first salvo of plasma fire illuminated space like a newborn star. Shields flared and died. The destroyer Prometheus vaporized in seconds, its hull unable to withstand concentrated fire while trapped in the anomaly. The cruiser Olympus followed, then the Acheron. Vex leaned forward in her command throne, compound eyes gleaming. Human vessels burned beautifully. Their oxygen-rich atmospheres fed the flames that consumed crew and machinery alike. She had studied human psychology extensively. They valued individual lives far beyond rational calculation. Every death would wound their collective spirit. Focus fire on their command ships, she ordered. Let them watch their leaders die first. But something was wrong. Vex's tactical officer, a crustacean Keltie with 6 arms, manipulated his instruments frantically. Admiral, detecting hyperspace distortion at grid 77 Mark IV. Something's coming through. Impossible. The gravity well prevents all FTL transit. Nevertheless, Admiral, contact established. Single vessel, human configuration, designation, UES Meridian. The Meridian emerged from hyperspace like a ghost materializing from shadow. Unlike the trapped fleet, this vessel moved freely, its sleek hull unmarked by the gravitational anomaly's effects. It was smaller than the human dreadnoughts, a heavy cruiser at best, but something about its configuration made Vex's carapace prickle with unease. Commander Lysander Caney stood on the Meridian's bridge, watching the slaughter unfold on the main display. His ship's unique prototype drive had allowed them to bypass the gravity well entirely, but they were alone against impossible odds. 200 enemy vessels surrounded his trapped comrades like wolves circling wounded prey. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Nyara Okoye from the sensor station, "the fleet has maybe 10 minutes before total structural failure. The Retribution is down to emergency power." Caney's expression remained calm, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the command rail. The Meridian was humanity's most advanced vessel, equipped with experimental technology that pushed the boundaries of known physics. But one ship against 200? Nyara, status on the quantum cascade array? "Fully charged, sir. All safety protocols are, well, they're screaming warnings, but the system is ready. And our Nova-class torpedoes? 16 loaded, sir. Though at these odds," Caney allowed himself a thin smile. "Lieutenant, you're thinking like a conventional tactician. The hegemony expects us to die heroically, perhaps taking a few of their ships with us. They've calculated acceptable losses based on human behavioral patterns." He turned to face his crew, 23 souls who had volunteered for this experimental mission. They don't understand the first thing about us. The hegemony's trap continued its methodical execution. Admiral Vex watched with clinical satisfaction as another human vessel, The battlecruiser Valiant succumbed to concentrated plasma fire. Its reactor containment failed in a brilliant cascade of fusion fire, the explosion illuminating the killing field like a brief second sun. 32. Ships remained of the original 47. The Meridian hung at the edge of the formation, seemingly paralyzed by the overwhelming odds. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, "the lone human vessel hasn't moved in 4 minutes. Minimal power readings. Perhaps they're surrendering?" Vex's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Humans don't surrender, they're planning something." She activated her comm system. "All vessels, maintain formation. Continue systematic destruction of trapped fleet. Reserve Squadron Kappa will deal with the stray vessel." 16 hegemony destroyers peeled away from the main formation, their sleek hulls bristling with weapon ports. They approached the Meridian in a classic pincer formation, designed to eliminate any possibility of escape. On the Meridian's bridge, Commander Caney watched the approaching ships with apparent calm. His crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency, but he could feel the tension crackling through the air like static electricity. "Range to target formation?" he asked quietly. 20,000 kilometers and closing," responded his weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Ravi Nexus. "Optimal firing solution in 30 seconds. Niara, passive sensor sweep of the gravity well. I need to know everything about its structure." Lieutenant Okoye's fingers danced across her console. "Sir, it's elegant. A standing wave pattern, generated by graviton emitters positioned at precise intervals around the perimeter. The mathematics are incredible. They've created a stable distortion in space-time itself." "Every standing wave has nodes," Caney murmured. "Points where the interference pattern creates null spaces." "Yes, sir. I'm detecting 17 such points scattered throughout the field. But they're tiny, no larger than a fighter craft, and they shift position every few seconds. The hegemony destroyers opened fire at 15,000 kilometers. Plasma bolts and particle beams converged on the Meridian's position, but the human ship wasn't there anymore. It had vanished between one sensor sweep and the next, leaving only dissipating energy signatures. "Where did it go?" Vex demanded, her voice rising to a shriek that echoed through the hegemony command ship's bridge. "Detecting movement within the gravity well, Admiral," her sensor operator reported, voice trembling. "The human ship. It's navigating between the null points, moving toward the trapped fleet." Vex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The gravity well's null points were barely wide enough for a shuttle, and they shifted constantly according to complex mathematical patterns. To navigate them required split-second timing and calculations beyond the capacity of organic minds. But there was the Meridian, dancing through the deadly maze like a leaf on the wind. It reached the first trapped human vessel, the heavy cruiser, Determination, and somehow managed to lock onto its hull without triggering the gravitational distortion. "What are they doing?" Vex whispered. Her answer came moments later. A brilliant beam of energy erupted from the Meridian, not directed at the hegemony fleet, but at the Determination itself. But instead of destroying the ship, the beam seemed to energize it. The cruiser's engines flickered to life, its weapon systems powered up, and slowly, impossibly, it began to move. "They're sharing power," Vex realized. "Somehow that ship is immune to the gravity well, and it's transferring energy to the trapped vessels." The Determination broke free from the gravitational anomaly and immediately opened fire on the nearest hegemony ships. Its weapons, supercharged by the Meridian's energy transfer, punched through shields and armor with devastating efficiency. "All vessels, concentrate fire on the small ship," Vex commanded. "It's the key to their escape." But the Meridian was already moving, threading through the null points toward the next trapped vessel. Energy beams arced between the two ships as another human vessel roared to life. Caney allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he watched the Valorous shake off the gravity well's grip. The quantum cascade array was performing beyond specifications, creating localized fields of normal spacetime around each ship it touched. The process was incredibly dangerous. One miscalculation would tear both vessels apart at the molecular level. Sir, we're taking fire from all directions, reported his helmsman, Ensign Petra Vasquez. Shields down to 60%. Maintain. Course. How many ships have we freed? 7, sir. But the array is overheating. We might get 4 more before system failure. Caney nodded grimly. 11 ships against 200 was still impossible odds, but it was better than none. Signal the freed vessels. Attack pattern Lazarus, hit and run. Use the gravity well as cover. The battle had transformed from a methodical execution into chaos. Admiral Vex watched her tactical display with growing alarm as 11 human ships darted in and out of the gravity well, using its very presence as both shield and weapon. The freed vessels moved with unprecedented coordination, their tactics adapted to the unique battlefield in ways her strategic computers couldn't predict. Damage. Report, she demanded. 17 vessels destroyed, 23 damaged, her tactical officer reported. The humans are using the gravitational distortion to amplify their weapons' yield. When they fire through the well's edge, the gravitational lensing effect increases. Projectile velocity by 30%. Vex's compound eyes narrowed. The humans were turning her perfect trap into an advantage. Worse, that accursed small ship continued its rescue operation, freeing another trapped vessel every few minutes despite concentrated fire from her entire fleet. Status on the gravity well generators? Stable, Admiral. But the human ship seems to have mapped the null point pattern. It's moving between them with increasing efficiency. On the Meridian's bridge, Commander Caney felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's environmental controls. The quantum cascade array was operating at 110% capacity, its exotic matter containment systems pushed beyond all safety margins. Warning lights bathed the bridge in intermittent red as system after system approached critical failure. 15th ship freed, reported Lieutenant Okoye. But sir, we're losing coherence in the cascade matrix. The exotic matter is beginning to phase shift. How long? Maybe 5 more rescues before catastrophic failure. The quantum foam is becoming unstable. Caney stared at the tactical display. 32 ships had been trapped initially. 15 were now free and fighting. That left 17 still caught in the gravity well, including the fleet flagship Retribution. Captain Vossick's ship carried the sector's primary command and control systems. Losing it would cripple human operations in this entire arm of the galaxy. Prioritize the Retribution, Caney ordered. Whatever happens, we get the flagship out. Sir, interrupted Lieutenant Commander Nexus from the weapons station, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the hegemony formation. They're charging some kind of super weapon. Admiral Vex stood before the main display of her flagship, watching the human ships dart between her vessels like annoying insects. Enough. The Council of Hierarchs had given her discretionary authority to use any weapon necessary to ensure victory. She had hoped conventional tactics would suffice, but these humans were proving more resourceful than anticipated. Activate the stellar cascade weapon, she commanded. Her crew exchanged worried glances. The stellar cascade was a prototype, a weapon that converted stellar matter into directed energy by temporarily destabilizing local spacetime. The theoretical yield was equivalent to a small supernova, but focused into a coherent beam. It would destroy everything within 10 light minutes, including her own ships if they were too close. Admiral, that weapon is untested. The energy release could end this war today, Vex finished. Begin charging sequence. All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance. The massive weapon platform that had been hidden behind Vex's flagship began to glow with barely contained stellar fire. Energy readings spiked beyond measurement as the device prepared to unleash destruction on a scale rarely seen in galactic warfare. On the Meridian, Lieutenant Okoye's sensor board erupted in warnings. Sir, massive energy buildup from the hegemony. Flagship. Whatever they're charging, it's pulling power from at least 3 stellar masses. Caney felt ice form in his veins. A weapon that could tap stellar energy directly. There was no defense against that level of firepower. Even if they freed every remaining ship, they couldn't survive what was coming. Time to full charge? 7 minutes, sir. And time to free the remaining ships? 12 minutes minimum, assuming the array doesn't fail first. The mathematics were brutal and simple. They couldn't save everyone. Kaney closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 17 ships and their crews pressing down on him. When he opened them again, his expression was resolute. New plan. Signal all freed vessels. Prepare for Operation Prometheus. His bridge crew looked at him with expressions ranging from confusion to horror. Operation Prometheus was a theoretical tactic that had never been attempted in live combat. The risks were astronomical. "Sir," Lieutenant Okoye said quietly, "the probability matrices for Prometheus show a 97% chance of total mission failure." "Which means a 3% chance of success," Kaney replied. "I'll take those odds over certain extinction." He activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Meridian Actual. We have 6 minutes before the hegemony fires a stellar-level weapon. Standard tactics are insufficient. We're going to do something they'll never expect." He paused, looking at each member of his bridge crew in turn. "We're going to destroy their weapon by flying through it." The freed human ships moved into formation with mechanical precision, their hulls scarred by plasma fire, but their spirits unbroken. 15 vessels against nearly 200, facing a weapon that could crack planets. The tactical computers aboard each ship painted the same grim picture. Survival probability approaching 0, but Commander Kaney had spent years studying humanity's greatest military victories, and he knew that mathematics often failed to account for the human factor. The Battle of Thermopylae, the charge of the Light Brigade, the defense of Firebase Alpha. History was filled with moments when impossible odds meant nothing in the face of absolute determination. "All ships form up on the Meridian," he broadcast. "Tight formation, overlapping shields. We're going to punch through their line directly toward the weapon platform." Admiral Vex watched the human formation with growing confusion. The freed ships were clustering together, presenting a single concentrated target instead of dispersing to maximize their survival chances. Were they planning a suicide run? Even if they somehow reached the Stellar Cascade platform, their combined firepower couldn't significantly damage it. "Admiral, the humans are moving directly toward us," her tactical officer reported. "Present course will bring them within the weapon's firing arc in 4 minutes. Perfect. They're doing our work for us." Vex's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. "Continue charging sequence. All vessels, maintain formation. Let them come." On the Meridian's bridge, Lieutenant Okoye monitored the formation's structural integrity. As 15 ships flew so close together, their shields created a single, overlapping barrier. The technique was incredibly dangerous. One minor course correction could cause catastrophic collisions. "Formation holding steady," she reported. "But sir, the Cascade Array is showing critical fluctuations. The exotic matter containment is failing." "How long?" Kaney asked without taking his eyes off the tactical display. 3 minutes before total Cascade failure. When that happens, the quantum foam will explosively decompress. And if we're in close formation when that happens, the decompression wave will propagate through our overlapping shield matrix, creating a localized space-time distortion. Think of it as a very small, very brief wormhole. Ensign Vasquez looked up from her navigation console. "Sir, are you planning to use our own weapon failure as a tactical advantage?" Kaney smiled grimly. "The hegemony expects us to die conventionally. They've calculated acceptable losses based on traditional human tactics. But what if we don't die conventionally?" The human formation accelerated toward the hegemony fleet, their ships locked in perfect synchronization. Plasma fire erupted from dozens of enemy vessels, but the overlapping shield matrix held, distributing the energy load across all 15 ships. 2 minutes to weapon discharge," reported the Meridian's tactical officer. 1 minute to cascade failure. "All ships, prepare for quantum decompression," Kaney broadcast. "On my mark, drop all shields simultaneously and redirect all power to structural integrity fields." The Stellar Cascade weapon reached full charge, its energy output registering on sensors across the star system. The massive beam erupted from the platform like a concentrated piece of stellar core, capable of vaporizing entire fleets in seconds. "Mark!" Caney shouted. 15 human ships dropped their shields at the exact moment the quantum cascade array explosively failed. The exotic matter containment breach created a bubble of twisted space-time that enveloped the entire formation. Reality folded in on itself as the laws of physics temporarily suspended their normal operation. The stellar cascade beam struck the quantum distortion field and stopped, not deflected, not absorbed, but literally stopped in space as if frozen. In time, the energy that should have vaporized the human fleet instead hung motionless, trapped in a pocket dimension that existed for exactly 2.7 seconds. When normal spacetime reasserted itself, the human formation was gone. The stellar cascade beam completed its journey, striking empty space where 15 ships had been moments before. "Where did they go?" Admiral Vex demanded, her voice rising to a shriek. Her answer came from her own tactical display. 15 human ships materialized directly behind the hegemony fleet, their quantum jump having carried them through the distortion field to emerge at the exact coordinates where the stellar cascade weapon platform hung vulnerable and undefended. "Impossible," Vex whispered. "They used our own weapon against us." The human ships opened fire at point-blank range, their weapons supercharged by residual exotic matter from the cascade failure. The stellar cascade platform, designed to project devastating energy but never intended to withstand direct assault, began to buckle under the concentrated firepower. But the platform wasn't the real target. Commander Caney had studied the weapon's design during their approach, and he understood its greatest weakness. The device channeled stellar energy through a series of containment fields that required perfect stability to prevent catastrophic feedback. "All ships concentrate fire on the tertiary containment matrix," he ordered. "Grid reference 77 Alpha." The combined firepower of 15 ships struck the platform's most vulnerable point. The containment field collapsed, and stellar fire that had been perfectly controlled suddenly found itself free to expand in all directions. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The destruction of the stellar cascade weapon sent shockwaves through both fleets, literal gravitational waves that rippled outward from the detonation point, followed by an electromagnetic pulse that temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. When the interference cleared, the tactical situation had transformed completely. The weapon platform was gone, vaporized in a release of energy that briefly outshone the system's star. But the explosion had done more than eliminate the hegemony's superweapon. It had destabilized the gravity well that held the remaining human ships captive. "Gravitational anomaly collapsing," reported Lieutenant Okoye, her voice tight with excitement. "The stellar cascade detonation created massive space-time ripples. The standing wave pattern is breaking down." Commander Caney watched his tactical display as 17 trapped human ships suddenly lurched into motion, their engines roaring to life as the artificial gravity well released its grip. The fleet flagship Retribution led the charge, its massive guns swinging toward the nearest hegemony vessels. "All ships, this is Retribution Actual," Captain Vossick's voice crackled over the comm system. "Form attack formation Delta 7. Let's return the favor." But Admiral Vex was not finished. The loss of her superweapon and the freeing of the human fleet had turned a certain victory into a desperate battle for survival. But she still commanded numerical superiority. Her remaining vessels, nearly 150 strong, began to regroup, their formations tightening for a final decisive engagement. "All vessels converge on the human fleet," she commanded. "Concentrated fire on their flagship. If we destroy their command structure, the remaining ships will scatter." The Meridian found itself at the center of a massive furball as both fleets collided in the space where the gravity well had been. Ships wheeled and dove in 3-dimensional combat, their weapons painting space with deadly light. But something had changed in the human fleet's tactics. They moved with a coordination that seemed almost supernatural. "Sir," Lieutenant Okoye reported, "I'm reading residual quantum entanglement between our ships. The cascade array failure created a temporary neural link across the entire formation. Caney blinked in surprise. A neural link? The exotic matter exposure synchronized our ship's bioneural systems. We're essentially operating as a single distributed organism. Every captain knows exactly what every other captain is thinking. The implications were staggering. Human tactical doctrine had always emphasized individual initiative and adaptability. But now, the fleet moved as one mind distributed across 32 vessels. They anticipated each other's maneuvers, coordinated attacks without communication, and covered each other's weaknesses with perfect timing. The hegemony fleet, despite its numerical advantage, found itself outmaneuvered at every turn. Ships that should have been easy targets seemed to know exactly when and where attacks were coming. Human vessels appeared where they shouldn't be, struck where they weren't expected, and vanished before retaliation could arrive. "This is impossible," Admiral Vex muttered, watching her tactical display with growing horror. "They're fighting like they share a single mind." "Admiral," her sensor operator reported, "detecting massive energy buildup from the human flagship. They're charging their primary weapon array." The Retribution was indeed charging its main guns, but not for a conventional attack. Captain Vosik, linked to the quantum neural network, could feel the intentions of every ship in his fleet. They were preparing something unprecedented, a coordinated attack using the residual exotic matter in their systems to amplify their weapons beyond normal. "Parameters. All ships prepare for synchronized fire," Vosik transmitted. "Target the hegemony flagship, full quantum enhancement." 32 ships fired simultaneously, their weapons supercharged by exotic matter and perfectly coordinated through the neural link. The combined beam struck the Dominion's maw with the force of a small star, punching through its shields and armor like they were paper. Admiral Vex had time for one final thought before her flagship's reactor containment failed. These humans, they're not just adaptive, they're evolving. The explosion of the hegemony flagship sent ripples of shock through the alien formation. Ships that had fought with disciplined coordination suddenly found themselves leaderless, their command structure decapitated in a single devastating attack. But Commander Caney felt no satisfaction in the victory. The neural link was fading, as the exotic matter in their systems gradually decayed, and he could sense the growing chaos in the enemy fleet. The hegemony ships were breaking formation, some fleeing toward the system's edge while others fought on with desperate fury. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Nexus reported, "enemy fleet is scattering. Should we pursue?" Caney studied the tactical display, calculating odds and outcomes. The human fleet had suffered heavy losses, 17 ships destroyed, 12 more heavily damaged. They had won, but at a terrible cost. "Negative, let them go. We need to regroup and tend to our wounded." But even as he gave the order, Caney knew this victory was more than just a tactical success. The quantum neural link had shown humanity something new about themselves, the potential for true unity in the face of impossible odds. The implications would ripple through human space for generations to come. The battlefield fell silent except for the crackle of cooling metal and the whisper of escaping atmosphere from damaged hulls. Debris clouds drifted through space, the remains of both human and hegemony vessels, their crews now part of the eternal stars they had fought to defend. Commander Caney stood in the Meridian's observation deck, watching recovery teams work to extract survivors from the wreckage. His ship had taken severe damage during the final engagement. Hull breaches sealed with emergency patches, 3 decks vented to space, and the quantum cascade array completely burned out. But they were alive, and that was more than many could say. "Final casualty report, sir," Lieutenant Okoye said quietly, entering the observation deck with a datapad. 17 ships lost, 12,000 personnel KIA or missing. The Prometheus, Acheron, Valiant, and Determination are total losses. Caney accepted the pad with steady hands, though he felt each name like a physical blow. These weren't just numbers. They were friends, colleagues, fellow warriors who had trusted him to lead them through the impossible. The weight of command had never felt heavier. What about the hegemony forces? 73 vessels destroyed, 31 damaged and limping toward the system's edge. Admiral Vex's flagship was completely vaporized. No survivors. Their remaining forces are in full retreat. A tactical victory, but at what cost? Caney had studied enough military history to know that Pyrrhic victories often proved more devastating than defeats. The human fleet had been crippled, their advanced vessels reduced to scrap metal and memories. But as he watched the rescue operations, something caught his attention. The crews of different ships were working together with unprecedented coordination, moving in perfect synchronization despite the chaos around them. The quantum neural link had faded, but its effects lingered. "Nyara, are you seeing this?" Lieutenant Okoye followed his gaze to where teams from the Retribution and Meridian were working together to extract survivors from a damaged destroyer. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, each person anticipating the other's actions. Without verbal communication. "The entanglement effect," she breathed. "It's not completely gone. There's still some residual quantum coherence between personnel who were exposed to the cascade field." "How many people?" "The entire fleet, sir. Nearly 20,000 souls, all sharing trace amounts of quantum entanglement. They're still connected, just at a much lower level than during the battle." Caney stared at the rescue operations with new understanding. The quantum neural link hadn't just been a tactical advantage. It had fundamentally changed every human who experienced it. They were no longer just individuals fighting for survival, but part of something larger. A communication alert chimed, and Captain Vossick's image appeared on the observation deck's display. The veteran officer looked exhausted but determined, his uniform stained with the grime of battle. "Commander Caney, I wanted to thank you personally. Your actions today saved not just the fleet, but potentially the entire war effort." "The cost was too high, Captain. 17 ships. Gave their lives so that humanity could survive," Vossick interrupted. "Don't diminish their sacrifice with regret. They knew the odds when they volunteered for this mission." "What happens now?" Caney asked. "The hegemony will send reinforcements. We can't face another fleet in our current condition." Vossick's expression grew thoughtful. "That's just it, Commander. I don't think they will." "Sir?" "I've been monitoring hegemony communications since the battle ended. Their fleet commanders are reporting something they call adaptive evolution in human forces. They're describing us as a species that can somehow share consciousness in battle." Caney felt a chill run down his spine. They think we're some kind of hive mind? Worse, they think we're becoming something beyond their understanding. The quantum entanglement effect, the coordinated tactics, the ability to evolve our strategies in real time. It's everything they fear about upstart species. The implications were staggering. The hegemony's entire philosophy was based on the supremacy of established order over chaos, of ancient wisdom over adaptive innovation. If they believed humanity was evolving beyond their ability to predict or control, they might consider more drastic measures. They'll come back with everything they have, Caney realized. This was just a test. The real war is about to begin. Perhaps, Vossick agreed. But they'll be facing a humanity that has learned something new about itself. The quantum entanglement effect isn't just fading. It's spreading. Every human who comes into contact with the exposed personnel is showing trace amounts of the coherence field. Are you saying? I'm saying that what happened here today might be the beginning of something unprecedented, not just for the war, but for our entire species. As if to prove his point, rescue teams across the battlefield suddenly moved in, perfect unison, their coordinated efforts guided by an invisible connection that transcended individual consciousness. The effect was subtle, but unmistakable. Humanity was changing. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler 442b, the quantum effects had spread throughout human space like ripples in a cosmic pond. Every station, every colony, every ship that made contact with the survivors reported the same phenomenon. Trace amounts of quantum entanglement appearing in their populations, creating webs of connection that spanned star systems. Commander Caney stood in the briefing room of Starbase Meridian, named in honor of his ship's sacrifice. The Meridian itself was beyond repair, its hull too damaged to salvage, but its crew had become the most studied humans in the galaxy. Scientists, military tacticians, and philosophers all wanted to understand what they had become. The entanglement field is self-propagating, Dr. Elena Vasquez reported to the assembled fleet commanders. Each person who develops quantum coherence can induce it in others through prolonged contact. The effect is exponential. We're looking at species-wide consciousness within a generation. Fleet Admiral Torres, overall commander of human forces in the sector, leaned forward in his chair. Doctor, are you telling us that humanity is evolving into a hive mind? Not a hive mind, Admiral. Something far more complex. Individual consciousness remains intact, but it's supplemented by an underlying network of shared awareness. Think of it as humanity developing a collective unconscious that actually functions. Caney remembered the sensation of the neural link during battle. The perfect coordination, the shared knowledge, the sense of being part of something greater than himself. But he also remembered his individuality, his personal choices, his unique perspective. It wasn't a loss of self, but an expansion of it. What are the tactical implications? Asked Captain Vosek, whose retribution had become the flagship of the reformed fleet. Unknown but potentially revolutionary, Torres replied. Early reports from training exercises show unprecedented coordination between units. Ships are operating with efficiency levels we thought impossible, but more importantly, we're adapting to hegemony tactics faster than they can develop new ones. A communication alert interrupted the briefing. The main display activated, showing the worried face of Commander Patricia Hendricks from the Outer Rim listening post at Wolf 359. Admiral Torres, we're detecting massive fleet movements in hegemony space. Long-range sensors show at least 500 vessels converging on the Rigel system. They're not just sending reinforcements, they're committing their entire reserve fleet. The briefing room fell silent. 500 ships represented nearly a quarter of the hegemony's total military strength. They weren't planning another test or limited engagement. They were preparing for total war. Time to intercept? Torres asked. 18 days, sir. But Admiral, there's something else. We're detecting similar quantum signatures from their fleet. The hegemony is trying to replicate our entanglement effect. Caney felt his blood turn to ice. If the hegemony could duplicate the quantum neural link, humanity's advantage would evaporate. Worse, they had centuries of tactical experience to draw upon. An entangled hegemony fleet would be nearly unstoppable. How close are they to success? Torres demanded. Unknown, sir, but they're using some kind of artificial enhancement, possibly cybernetic implants linked to quantum processors. It's not organic evolution like ours, but it might be effective. Enough. After the communication ended, the briefing room erupted in discussion. Some officers called for immediate attack to disrupt the hegemony's experiments. Others argued for defensive positions to maximize their home field advantage. But Caney found himself thinking about evolution. Not just technological, but fundamental. Admiral, he said, standing to address the room. Permission to speak freely? Granted, Commander. We're thinking about this wrong. The hegemony sees our quantum entanglement as a weapon to be copied or countered. But what if it's not a weapon at all? What if it's exactly what Dr. Vasquez said? Evolution. Explain. Caney moved to the tactical display, highlighting the projected fleet movements. The hegemony has ruled this galaxy for millennia through superior numbers and established tactics. They're a mature civilization that has optimized everything according to their understanding of warfare. But optimization assumes a static environment. He gestured to the quantum field readings that now surrounded every human installation. We're not static anymore. We're becoming something that literally didn't exist 3 weeks ago. Every day, every hour, we're developing new capabilities, new ways of thinking, new solutions to problems that haven't been solved before. So we wait for them to come to us? Captain Vosek asked. No, Captain. We go to them, but not to fight. The war they expect, we go to show them something that will change everything. Torres frowned. Commander, 500 ships? Won't matter if we're not fighting the same war they are, Caney finished. The quantum entanglement isn't just making us better soldiers, it's making us better humans. We're developing empathy on a species level, understanding that transcends individual perspective, wisdom that emerges from collective experience. He paused, looking around the room at faces that showed the subtle signs of quantum coherence, the slight synchronization of breathing, the unconscious mirroring of expressions, the sense of shared purpose that went beyond mere military discipline. What? If we don't destroy their fleet? What if we convert it? The silence that followed was profound. The idea was audacious beyond measure, not just defeating an enemy, but fundamentally changing them at the quantum level. It had never been attempted, and the risks were incalculable. Dr. Vasquez was the first to speak. Theoretically possible, but the energy requirements would be enormous. We'd need to create a quantum field capable of encompassing 500 ships simultaneously. The Meridian's cascade array is destroyed, Torres pointed out. We don't have the technology to generate that kind of field. No, Caney agreed. But we have something better. We have 30,000 humans who are already quantum entangled. If we could synchronize their consciousness, focus their collective will. You're talking about using human beings as living quantum transmitters, Dr. Vasquez said, her voice barely above a whisper. The psychological strain could be fatal. To some, yes, Caney admitted. But remember, we're not just individuals anymore. We're part of something larger. If we can demonstrate that to the hegemony, show them what we've become, they might choose to join us rather than fight us. Fleet Admiral Torres stood slowly, his expression thoughtful. Commander, what you're proposing isn't just a military operation. It's a fundamental shift in the nature of warfare itself. Instead of destroying our enemies, we're offering to elevate them. Yes, sir. Because the alternative is mutual annihilation, on a scale that will devastate both civilizations. The room fell silent again, as the assembled officers contemplated the implications. They were being asked to risk everything on an untested theory, to gamble the future of humanity, on the hope that their enemies could be transformed rather than destroyed. I'll need volunteers, Caney continued. People willing to link their consciousness directly to the quantum field, to serve as focal points for the entanglement effect. The survival rate for deep quantum integration is uncertain. Captain Vosick was the first to respond. Commander, the crew of the Retribution volunteers. As does the crew of the Determination, added Captain Maria Santos, whose ship had been one of the first freed from the gravity well. One by one, every officer in the room pledged their crews to the mission. They understood the risks, knew that many of them might not survive the attempt, but they also understood that this was humanity's chance to transcend the cycle of violence that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Very well, Torres said finally. Operation Transcendence is authorized. Commander Caney, you'll have overall tactical command. Dr. Vasquez, I need a full technical briefing on the quantum integration process within 12 hours. As the briefing broke up and officers hurried to their assignments, Caney found himself alone with his thoughts. In 18 days, they would face the largest fleet in hegemony history. They would either achieve something unprecedented in galactic warfare, or they would die trying. But as he felt the subtle pulse of quantum entanglement, connecting him to every human in the station, he knew they were no longer facing the future alone. They were part of something greater, something that had emerged from the crucible of battle and grown into something beautiful and terrible and new. The hegemony was about to learn what evolution really meant. 18 days later, the two fleets met in the space between stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the final confrontation, the human fleet didn't fire a single shot. Instead, 30,000 quantum-entangled minds reached out across space, offering the hegemony something they had never experienced: true understanding. The artificial quantum enhancement the aliens had developed couldn't replicate the organic growth of human consciousness, but it could receive it. For the first time in millennia, the hegemony felt what it was like to be truly connected to other minds, not through domination or hierarchy, but through genuine empathy and shared purpose. The effect rippled through their fleet like a wave of enlightenment, showing them that strength came not from conquest, but from unity. The war ended. Not with destruction, but with transformation. The hegemony became humanity's first true allies in the galaxy. Their ancient wisdom combined with human adaptability to create something greater than either species could achieve alone. And in the depths of space, where the Battle of Kepler 442b had raged, a memorial stood to honor those who had died so that others might evolve. The inscription read simply, "They fought not to destroy, but to become." The age of quantum consciousness had begun, and the galaxy would never know war the same way again.